You're listening to the TV Obsessive channel, presented by TVObscast.com.
Hello and welcome back to the TV Obsessive Podcast, episode 55. Coming at you again, this is Ryan Kirksey, writer and contributor for TVObsessive.com, joined by Cameron Crane, executive editor for the site. We're headed back into the kitchen today for the bear. Cameron, are you excited about that?
That's such a setup for Yes Chef. It's like I started to feel like a little like that's kind of cheesy. But yeah, no, I'm definitely looking forward to season 3 of The Bear, which comes out next week. We of course started the podcast with The Bear basically last year. If people want to go back to those episodes of the pod, we did one on season 1 and we did 2 on season 2 when it came out. Plan today basically is we're going to kind of revisit I guess season 2 in particular, kind of where it left us off, and think a bit about, well, what might be coming with season 3, which comes out on June 27th, which is next Thursday. We've generally been recording and putting these out on Fridays. We're going to stick with that and talk about The Bear next Friday. So hopefully you're with us, excited to watch it when it comes out, and will join us on next week to hear about that. But we're going to talk about where season 2 left us and so on and so forth today in the latter part of the pod.
Yeah, well, you and I don't know anything about season 3 yet. That'll be next
week.
We
don't know anything more than the world could know, right?
That's right.
Like you've seen the trailer or whatever. I mean, actually, I'm not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but you mentioned the episode titles are out. I don't know how much we want to even dig into that. Like I was looking at that, and there's like really brief episode descriptions, and so we'll see what we get into, but we don't have any knowledge at this point that other people don't have. Anyhow, that'll be the latter part of the pod. As per usual, first we'll talk a bit about what's been in the news this week related to television in the broad sense, what we've been watching a little bit, and so on and so forth. So we're sitting here, it's June 21st, which is today the first day of summer, or was that yesterday?
That was yesterday. Yesterday was the longest day of the year.
All right. Happy summer. Anyway, what got your eye? What's the news this week, Ryan?
Yeah, what seems like a news we are getting weekly. We are getting more people added to this Dexter prequel series. Now we've got Patrick Dempsey being added to the cast, joining Christian Slater, joining several others that we've talked about in previous weeks. Patrick Dempsey apparently going to play captain of the Miami Metro Homicide Division. I still don't recall if this has, I don't think this has a date, but this certainly has people attached to it by now.
Yeah, I mean, casting announcements and so on. I read into that, well, if they're still doing casting announcements and they haven't started filming yet, so I would probably guess 2025 at the earliest. We had an article on the site this week from George and Josh Bate, who are excited about this. Long-time listeners will know Ryan has not watched Dexter, so we're limited about what we can kind of dig into here. But George and Josh wrote something up. Kind of, I don't know. They're excited more than anything when look at that article. Patrick Dempsey, okay, definitely known name, a known face. They're getting people involved along those lines. That's kind of exciting. He's joining Christian Slater or Patrick Gibson, who probably a little bit less well known than Christian Slater and Patrick Dempsey, but putting a cast together. I believe Patrick Dempsey's character here is a new character. I don't think he was in the original series.
Yeah, I would think so. If it's set this far in the past, at least from my understanding of this. My question for you is, and I honestly don't know the answer to this: was Patrick Dempsey McDreamy or McSteamy on Grey's Anatomy? I never knew the difference.
Oh, I didn't know those were two different things.
I wish I could tell you. He was one of those two, but
I never. I want to say McDreamy, but like I never got into Grey's Anatomy.
Nor did I.
Which,
a lot of people yelling at us right now for our lack of knowledge of.
I personally, I don't know what it is. I've never particularly gotten into any of the medical shows.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's just not been my cup of tea, or something about it makes me start feeling like a hypochondriac or something that I just don't really. I kind of like House, but I never even watched that religiously, and I mostly just like how acerbic Ricky Laurie was.
Yes, I did enjoy House. I think I've seen every episode of House. That was a unique spin on the genre.
Cool. Yeah, I wouldn't say I've seen every episode. It was one of those things that used to be on maybe it still is on, you know, TNT or whatever. And like, okay, I'll watch an episode of House, you know.
Yeah.
Speaking of basic cable, make that seg, because House might have been doing reruns on USA. I don't know. Anyhow, they've renewed Resident Alien, which I was just telling you about last week. How I've been watching the first 3 seasons, really got into the show, really enjoying it. I did finish season 3, and so I'm all caught up, and so I'm very happy personally to have seen the news this week that Resident Alien has been renewed for season 4, and they're moving it from Sci-Fi to USA.
I saw
I don't know
this.
how much that
Actually,
matters, but
yeah, I was reading this with actually a lot of interest after you talked about this last week because I think the piece says a couple things which caught my eye. One of which is USA has a broader audience than Sci-Fi Network, and so it'll have a few more eyeballs. This likely happened because of what the article calls a heightened awareness for Resident Evil after the first couple of seasons were put on Netflix, and a lot of people are catching it there. And then USA is getting back into the sort of the content game. There's apparently adapting a one of the John Grisham novels. They're grabbing this show, so they're getting back into it. So no, hey, it's after you talked about for how much you like this show, I'm glad it's getting a 4th season.
yeah, absolutely. And hopefully, I don't know. I was looking in the article trying to find out, well, like, will the 4th season also immediately be available to stream on Peacock? Interesting background stuff in terms of the relationship between these networks too. To just hit on this briefly, right? You've got the USA to Netflix to USA pipeline going on,
Yeah,
because I've got to feel to some extent that USA is being motivated to get back into more original programming to some degree because of how successful Suits was on Netflix last
yes,
year. Suits was a USA show, right? USA has done some other things. The one that's always felt the like the most of an outlier to me was Mr. Robot was on
that's right.
USA.
They did have because I
USA
think USA, I think like Monk and Psych and some of these just sort of
Suits fits, but
yeah,
it's like they also
that's
did
right.
Mr. Robot.
They did have Mr. Robot.
Um, but I don't know. I mean, how big of a deal is it that it's moving from Sci-Fi to USA? If people aren't aware, it's the same company broadly speaking, right? These are NBC Universal
Yeah.
networks. I guess more people watch USA than Sci-Fi. Who knows at this point? Like
That's true.
are people watching cable? Are people catching this on Peacock? You got a bump because it's the first 2 seasons are on Netflix, which is an entirely separate company, of course.
Yeah.
But excited for it nonetheless. And if people are watching it on Netflix, I guess you can hope that then they have a deal to get season 3 on there. And maybe it'll be like a Better Call Saul kind of thing where you get
Yeah.
season 3 right before season 4 comes out, but then you don't get season 4 until right before season 5 comes out, or who knows if there'll even be a 5th season
Yeah.
for this one. But
That is their traditional model, and that actually makes sense. They decided to do it that way. But no, this was good news, I think, for
it's great. And
yeah,
I shared this
rising in popularity. This show is.
I shared this article, Ryan, from the Hollywood Reporter, because the first one I read had season 3 spoilers. Like it's for some
Oh,
why do you do this? Like you say, they're gonna make a season 4. And in our brief little news blur, we're gonna remind you how season 3 ends. Like a lot of people probably haven't seen season 3. We're reading this article, but they did leave it on a bit of a cliffhanger. So yeah, really
okay.
excited for this.
Well, another streaming note, I was very happy to see this. I'd seen I don't know what we call them anymore these days, a tweet earlier this week about this news that one of the more revered procedural crime dramas, Homicide: Life on the Streets, is coming to streaming. Finally, people were calling it, this is one of the 2 or 3 best shows that could not be found anywhere.
Yeah, because of music rights.
Yeah, music rights were posing some problems. It was produced so long ago. I think the death of Andre Brower really sort of started to push the agenda. We got to get this on somewhere, and so now it is coming to streaming. I'm going to watch this when it comes out. I've just heard so many good things about it.
Yeah, same. I haven't seen it. It hasn't been available to stream. I think maybe it was when Andre Brower died, hit on this briefly before, how you have this acclaimed show, you can't stream it anywhere. We've never seen it. Are you confident enough to just like shell out the cash for a DVD box set for something you've never seen, you
Yeah.
know. But yeah, so David Simon tweeted out, or I'm sorry, Elon, posted an X. David
Never.
Simon posted an X on X that that it's been cleared. So I mean, I think that's the primary source here, but it's been picked up by Deadline and other places, and it seems relatively official. But we don't have any specifics of where it might end up or anything like that. Given that it was an NBC show, maybe it'll end up on Peacock.
Yeah, and I had no idea that before I read this piece. 3 Peabody Awards, 2 Primetime Emmys, lead actor for Brower, the show. I mean, this was when I was in middle school, high school, so I guess it just sort of slipped through my radar. But there's just so much going for this. I think that I'll just say it's long overdue to get this on streaming and in front of more eyeballs.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And wait, remind me, have you seen The Wire?
I have seen the first 2 seasons of The Wire. I've not
Okay.
finished it
Yeah, you should watch The Wire. Anyway, there are people who say this is better than The Wire. Yeah,
yet.
and I don't know. I don't know if I buy that as someone who put The Wire pretty high up there in my rankings of all-time shows. People say it, so like if it's even if it's like not quite as good as The Wire in my mind, that would still be pretty good. So
Yeah,
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 excited about that. Hopefully, get more specific news in the relatively near future.
certainly. What else is? Oh, several things happening. Why don't we talk about switch gears for a second? Talk about Charles Barkley. We talked about Inside the
Yeah,
NBA a couple of weeks ago. You posted some interesting news, which he actually himself came out this weekend said, "This is 25th year of Inside the NBA coming up. That's going to be my last on television. I'm done after this." Which to me reads that he's got the inside scoop, obviously, of there's not going to be a Warner Brothers deal with the NBA after this season. There was still hope that maybe there would be, but whether there is or not, he's gone.
yeah. I wonder because I wanted to follow up on this because we did talk about this in a previous episode of the podcast. If you recall, at that point, which was maybe a couple weeks ago, Charles Barkley was saying, "Look, I'll do it. You know, like I'll fund Inside the NBA if it's not going to be on TV TNT anymore. Let's all go take our balls over here to like my production company." And we expressed some doubts about whether that could work. So I don't know. I mean, I put this on our sheet with a question mark because I think Charles Barkley is very frustrated about the whole situation. And so he went from a couple of weeks ago saying, "Let's keep doing it. I want to keep doing it. We can take it to my production company," to now saying, "I'm going to retire. I'm going to be done. I won't go work anywhere else." You know, so we can take him at his word. And look, I'm not suggesting that Charles Barkley is lying. I'm
Right.
suggesting that there is an outside chance that sometime between now and a year from now, he'll change his mind because he is going to do it next year. And he's saying, after next year, I'm going to retire. Does he know then for sure that TNT is no longer going to have it? Is he kind of just reading the tea leaves and thinking, well, that's probably the way it's going, and I'm frustrated with this whole situation, and I'm going to announce my
Yeah.
retirement? But could something happen in the following year that makes him change his mind? I wouldn't be super surprised. That's all I'm
Yeah. There is an interesting quote in here. I'm going to pass the baton at the end of next year. I hope the NBA stays with TNT. So not a closed door there. I'm not going to go to another network. I'm going to pass the baton to Jamal Crawford, Vince Carter, Steve Smith. These are ex-NBA guys that have been doing it on other networks. I'm just going to retire after 25 years. But you're right. That after 2 weeks ago, him saying, I might take this on, I might pay for it. This is a pivot that we'll have to watch and see if he sticks with this.
Yeah, and maybe he will retire. Again, I'm not doubting him. It's just, I mean, this is a broadcasting gig, so this isn't an exact analogy, but like Tom Brady retired twice. You remember when Brett Favre was talking about retirement?
Absolutely.
It was like for 3 or 4 years where it was like Brett Favre says he's going to retire. Nope, psych. Like, so you never know. And there's a whole year, and a lot can happen in a year. He is going to do it next year, right? So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, I thought that was worth noting.
Yeah, that will be something interesting to watch over the next year. Other things coming that might be interesting to watch over the next year that will be here, well, in the fairly near future. The Penguin, we have a trailer for that on
Mhm.
Max. It's, I think, a Max exclusive thing,
It
part
is
of the
the Penguin is a Max original. It is
Max
not an
original.
HBO original.
That's right. That's right. They have the what DC is calling the Elseworlds universe, right? So there's the James Gunn. He's creating a whole new DC world and a whole new DC universe. This is the not the spin-off, but sort of the multiverse element of that with Matt Reeves and his Batman movie with Robert Pattinson. There's a second one coming probably in the next year and a half. But in the meantime, we're going to get a show with Colin Farrell as the Penguin. I quite like this character in the movie. This is kind of my world, so I'm definitely going to watch this. It definitely looks as dark as the Batman was. And so I'm certainly intrigued. I think I'll be watching this.
Yeah, it definitely does look dark, gritty,
Yeah.
however you want to put this, kind of serious.
Yeah. Serious as a
Maybe,
comic book story can, yes.
yeah, it looks pretty good for what it is. I don't know. Maybe I'll check it out. Yeah, we've hit on this over and over again, and I remain rather ambivalent about like all comic book stuff anymore. And I
Yeah.
used to be more into this stuff. I got people talk about burnout. I don't know if it's a general phenomenon, but it is, at least for some of us, an individual phenomenon where I
Right.
just kind of burned out on it. But this does look pretty good. I did watch the trailer. I like Colin Farrell. Um,
I
and
have
if
I
it,
have I have high hopes only because I enjoy there's sort of this two versions of Batman. There's the superhero vigilante version and there's the detective version of Batman. And the Robert
yeah,
Pattinson version was very much the detective version of Batman, and this is sort of being the crime fighter. And I don't know how you do this show, frankly, without Batman in it. We'll see how they do with that. But I like the direction they took, like sort of the grounded nature of it. I think I'm just ready for superhero stuff that's not out in space and not multiverse and all the stuff. It's just give me a good, we keep coming back to the Daredevil show. Give me a good, just sort of on the street,
yeah,
everybody's against each other show.
but more grounded.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
See, but part of me really likes the campy Batman.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's anyway. Um, very, very briefly, I just saw this as I mentioned to you right before we got on today, that the U.S. Postal Service is releasing Alex Trebek stamps. So if you are a stamp collector or of any sort, or I mean, I thought it was pretty cool. They've got the stamp. Apparently the stamp is going to be like a Jeopardy answer, as it were, right? Question,
Ah,
however you're supposed to refer to clue, a Jeopardy clue, right?
yes, yes.
This naturalized citizen was host of Jeopardy for however many years or whatever, right? And then the correct answer is Alex Trebek. So apparently the stamp's going to look like a Jeopardy clue. I don't know. I thought it was pretty cool. We talked about Alex Trebek a little bit before. Definitely a giant in my mind as far as game show hosts go. So
Absolutely. And this is, we've spent time in the past year talking about him and talking about Pat Sajak. This is just our childhood is disappearing from us, my friend.
I also, Ryan, I hate to say, I was out of touch enough that I did not know that a stamp now costs 73 cents.
Yeah. Yeah, I think last time I bought stamps, it was like 39 cents or something.
Yeah, man. Like I was paying my bills online and stuff like that. I thought it was still more like 44 cents or something. So I
Yeah,
guess
totally.
I think it's raised a lot over the past 4 years for some reason. Probably because they're not funding the postal service well enough. Anyway, I'm not get political.
Yeah.
Um, one more thing I've got that you probably file this in your bucket of Cameron brings a thing to the table that you never heard anything
That's
about.
exactly where I put it. That's exactly where I put it.
Are you familiar with Murray Hill at all?
I am familiar with Murray Hill. I do know who Murray Hill is. But what you're about to talk about, this was completely off the radar if anything like this was happening.
Yeah, well, this is the first I saw about this. Murray Hill I'm a fan of primarily from Somebody Somewhere, which I think is a great show. People should watch. HBO original. Um, Peabody Award winning show, won Peabody this year. Congratulations to the Somebody Somewhere crew. Also tying things together with things we hit on the podcast, produced by the Duplass brothers, Duplass Brothers Productions,
Okay.
which I've written on that show. But anyway, so you have Murray Hill in that show playing Fred Rococo, very entertaining part of the show. And hopefully this is happening. He's shopping this show from what I gathered. So hopefully this finds a home. Hopefully he gets a chance to do this. He is having a little bit of a moment in terms of coming to prominence, but Murray Hill's developing what he describes as a campy detective show called Shorty Big Gun.
I very much enjoyed his description of this show, and that no one's getting killed, but we're like solving cases like someone's teeth at the nursing home disappear, things like that. That's the level of detective we're talking about here.
Yeah, not murder detective, but like who stole my dentures? And then,
Exactly.
it definitely sounds like it'd be a really entertaining thing. So hopefully that happens, and I'll be keeping an eye out for it and watching it if it does, when it does, positivity.
Positive,
Manifest.
absolutely. We need more. We need more things that are interesting and unique like that. So yeah.
Well, that's the thing about Somebody Somewhere. If you haven't watched it, Ryan, is it's like a relatively low stakes show, or you might feel that it's not like, oh, we've got to save the universe or whatever.
Yeah.
But about these interpersonal relationships between these characters, which of course matters. Like I always feel bad saying it's like low stakes because the stakes matter, but it's a small scale kind of story set in Manhattan, Kansas, with Bridget Everett and others, including Murray Hill. Anyway, I do recommend Somebody Somewhere quite a lot.
I'm going to put that on my Cameron list of things to watch, along with Phantasmus and The Floor. That's going in on that list.
Good deal. I mean, The Floor is an outlier there because I think like everyone will enjoy The Floor. That's right. A small number of people will enjoy Phantasmus. I just, I know that this show is not for everyone. I am really enjoying it. Somebody Somewhere might be a little bit in the middle. I guess I could imagine people finding it to be boring or something if they don't connect to it, don't get into it right. Yeah. But it's not. Phantasmus is weird. Somebody Somewhere is not weird. It's just
okay. Well, one more thing, which could also segue into sort of what we're watching right now. We got our very first image from the latest Game of Thrones property called A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. This is coming sometime likely in 2025 onto HBO. This is a show that's going to be based on a series of 3 novellas or short stories from George R.R. Martin. This one, if you're not aware, this one takes place in the time frame in between House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones.
So okay.
Like, instead of 200 years before Game of Thrones, we're going to be like 90 to 100 years before Game of Thrones. And we got our first glimpse of the 2 actors that will be the leads in that. Dunk is a very tall, powerful knight. Egg is his young person he is protecting. I won't say anything more about who that person is, but this just goes more to our theory of, for however long House of the Dragon goes, we're going to get one of these 2 shows every year. It just seems like in perpetuity. And then when one of them ends, we're going to get the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. It just seems like that's where we're headed.
It's interesting because it definitely seems like HBO is saying, let's bet on Game of Thrones. Let's bet big on Game of Thrones.
Yep.
Which is smart, I think. It's weird because the ending of Game of Thrones itself was so like universally panned. There was so much negative sentiment, and I've seen a lot of people saying like things like how memory hold that show is. Like you can't almost think of an instance of a show that had that massive of a cultural impact or taking over the cultural conversation and then just kind of like disappeared. Yeah. Like no one wants to talk about it until House of the Dragon, and then made people sort of do. But I don't know. It's just very strange. Are people sufficiently into this new stuff? And I'm not sure. I saw a couple other things this week. to mention on them betting on it, right? As I sent you that link with the image, that they put a big fake dragon on the Empire State Building before the
Yep.
so that was amusing. But then after the season premiere, they're trying to say it was the highest numbers for anything on Max, but that's a fudge because when House of Dragon season 1 came out, it was still HBO Max, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the season 1 premiere actually did better than the season 2 premiere.
Yeah, that's a good way to segue here because I think the numbers overall were it was something like 10.6 or 10.7 million people watched the first episode, the premiere of House of the Dragon last year. Over the first, I think, 48 hours, it was 7.5 or 7.6 million. Now, numbers will be added to that, in the days leading up to episode 2 here. But yeah, it didn't. Yeah, it didn't grab 100% of the people that tuned in to start the first season, certainly.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about this maybe in a minute, or talk about this is in some of the things I've been writing, but there's some things in the first season that turn some people off. And yeah, I mean, it's still incredibly popular and it's all over, just sort of, as you said, a cultural conversation. But I think it's sort of like, will they ever get be able to achieve that high again from season 3, 4, 5, 6 of Game of Thrones? Maybe not, but they're
I
going to
don't
try
know. Yeah,
that game there.
it'll be a question because it could just kind of dwindle in its viewership and still be worth doing, but maybe the season 1 premiere was the high point of people saying like, oh, I remember when I was really into Game of Thrones, I'll check this show out. And then I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not trying to get down on it. And I hate to kind of engage too much in the ratings talk, but they're clearly betting so big on the Game of Thrones averse with Night of the Seven Kingdoms and the other show we've talked more than one, right? There's a 10,000 Ship show, I think the animated shows, and
there certainly is animation. There's another one that's been revived, I think, based on the numbers that are coming from House of the Dragon about the 10,000 ships. This thousands of years before Game of Thrones. So yeah, as you said, that they are pushing all in on Game of Thrones, and I just think we'll be seeing that content for a long time until they just see it's not, either in terms of audience numbers or financially worth it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they've got the hardcore kind of George R.R. Martin fans, so that that gives a floor to the bet in a certain way.
Yeah.
Of course, they disappointed them, I think, with the season 2 premiere, and they disappointed more of them. They disappointed me because it was like people were talking about this big moment. I didn't even realize that was the moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like before, is people were like, "Oh, you're gonna have this blood and cheese moment," and I didn't even realize that was that until I was reading about it later and the differences between what they did in the show and what they did in the book. I think that was pretty disappointing. Hopefully, it gets better, but that was my read on the first episode, which I did watch, but I didn't think was very good. I mean, honestly, I wasn't that into it.
So our recap is up on the site right now about episode 1. Episode 2 will also be out Sunday night. So yeah, there is, without any spoilers, there is this massively important and gruesome story that takes place that was depicted on screen Sunday night, and many of those that were familiar with that story were the conversations. They're extremely let down by how they depicted it, by how they changed aspects of the story, how certain characters reacted within it, and so it was certainly something that and I've been thinking a lot about this since writing the piece and since watching it and hearing some of this conversation. The people that knew this, that knew the nature of it, are disappointed. Of the, let's say, 8 or 9 million people have watched this episode now, how many of those do you think are book readers or text absorbers? I mean, I don't know. They have to sort of have this fine balance of appealing to both sides, right? And they've got a story to tell that needs to adapt to a majority of people that have not read this. And so what character choices they're going to make with some of the people that were impacted by these changes, I'm withholding judgment, I guess. I was disappointed. I was very disappointed, but
I guess that's true.
How the story goes.
Yeah, I guess that's true because you could also ask, well, how many people are like me, Cameron Crane, right? Who part of how I got onto this is I'm like, I see Roxana Haddadi's article, and she does good work in general with culture. Yeah. And the headline is something like, "Why that scene in Game of Thrones should have been more disturbing." So I read it, and it's like, here's what happened in the book. I'm like, oh wow, that would have been something, But yeah, I mean, any other people may have watched it and just kind of be blissfully unaware of the differences, and maybe, or I mean, look, it's not like what happened in the show is not disturbing.
No, it's disturbing.
It's disturbing. What happened in the book apparently was like they dialed it back apparently, and I don't know, personally I found that a little disappointing to know, but we'll see how it goes. I mean,
Yeah.
I did enjoy the new opening title sequence. I thought that was very cool.
Very much so. That was as much as you can complain or have problems with an opening title sequence, I guess, for a show like this. I thought that the change to what they did by sort of weaving this tapestry of the story was, I mean, inspired and brilliant. Frankly, I think it was really, really well done.
Yeah, but don't change the music.
No. Not at all. So we'll continue to have weekly recaps. I'm doing that each week. I'll go ahead and put my claim in on Night of Seven Kingdoms as well now before he comes out. But we'll be with you for the next 7 weeks on.
We're on Game of Thrones. The Game of Thrones beat. That's cool.
Yeah.
I got into this week. I started watching The Traitors. Do you know what this is? Have you ever seen this show?
I've seen trailers and read a couple of pieces of what this is about, but I'd love to know more about what exactly this is, because I'm not quite sure I comprehend what kind of show we're talking about here.
All right, so first let me say something on background. We've hit on reality TV here and there over the course of the pod. If longtime listeners have been, with us, you may have gathered that I don't watch a lot of reality TV, at least not anymore. And it's interesting for me to think about how what happened for me somehow is I used to watch some of these reality TV shows like Top Chef, Project Runway, and stuff when I just had cable. And somehow when I went to the streaming only, when I cut the cord, as they say, which for me was in like 2010, I always felt like binge watching a reality show on a streaming service was weird.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I thought that, but it just didn't do it. Okay. So anyway, this is like legitimately my first experience of doing that. And I'd seen some stuff about this show. It won awards for like reality show awards this past year. But the host of the show is Alan Cumming. That may have been the biggest thing that drew me to check it out, because I love Alan Cumming. I don't know about you.
Oh yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
So I thought, okay. And then I was reading about the premise. And I thought this sounded interesting. Now we know, longtime listeners will also know, I do like game shows. So whatever the dichotomy is.
Yes, you do.
So this is in the space of, it's a reality show, but it's competition. It's a game. And the game is kind of interesting. So they bring a bunch of people. I think they started with like 22 people into this castle in Scotland. And so Alan Cummings playing up the Scottish accent, which he is Scottish. So it's like interesting, because so many things I've seen Alan Cumming in, plays an American. So he does an American accent. But in this one, he is Scottish, and he's I don't know anymore if this is how he sounds in real life, because he's like dialing it up as much as he can. He's like, I'm not only gonna do my Scottish accent, but I'm gonna chew the scenery, Anyway, so they bring in like 22 people, and then secretly a handful of them are selected to be traitors in the group. Okay. Everyone else they call a faithful. And the way the game works is they'll do challenges, to earn money for everyone, for whomever ends up there at the end of the competition. Okay.
Yeah.
If at the very end, everyone left is faithful, they split the pot between them. Okay. So you end up with 3 people. We're all faithfuls. Then we're just going to split the $250,000, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay? But if anyone left at the end as a traitor, they get all the money, right? Or if
Okay.
more than one trader is there, they would split the money. Okay. So anyhow, I don't know if I've gone in the right order of explaining this. The basic gameplay works that they do a competition, and then at the end of each day, they have to vote to banish one of the people in the group.
I see.
The
Okay.
goal of the banishment is to get rid of traitors, right? But of course, they often vote to get rid of someone that they're suspicious of who's not a traitor.
Right. Right.
Then overnight, the traitors meet secretly and they get to quote unquote murder someone.
Okay.
So they're removed from the game, whoever gets murdered. Okay. And everyone else finds out who's been murdered at breakfast the next morning. They just don't show up. All right. So you've got these different the three basic elements of the game are the competitions, the banishment, and the murder.
Yeah.
But the thing that they do further is that they sometimes don't give you everything in the same hour, in the same episode, or sometimes they switch it up. Even if they don't, you're almost always left on a cliffhanger because like the episode will end with the traitors talking about deciding who to murder. And they don't find out who has been murdered until the next episode. Right. So, man, I've just started binging this.
I was gonna say, is this all available now? Is the whole season available now?
There are 2 seasons of it available.
There are 2 seasons. Okay. Okay.
Well, wait, there's 2 seasons of the US version, which I've been talking about.
Okay.
And then there's 2 seasons of a UK version. And then I've also noticed that there are 2 versions of an Australian version and 2 versions of a New Zealand version. So the real question of like, how far am I going to go? Because they're all in English. They all have different characters. You know, they have different hosts. So, you know, but what's really interesting about the game, my big question going into it was whether, as an audience, we would know who the traitors are from the beginning.
Yeah. That's my question. Okay, I'm glad you're bringing this up.
Yeah, and so yes, we do.
Okay. Okay.
It'd be kind of interesting if we didn't. I think it'd be an entirely different show. It'd be maybe a little bit less of a reality show in a way.
Yeah.
It's very much a reality show, and thus we know who the traitors are. We get the traitors in, you know, their confessional scenes and so on. One thing I do think is kind of interesting about that is it leads you, or at least me, to almost be on the side of the traitors because I'm thinking about what their strategy should be.
Yeah.
Even if like ethically, I feel like I should be on the side of the faithful people. You know, they don't have all the information, so it's much harder to like vicariously try to play the game from their perspective. You know what I mean? But from the trader's perspective, you think about, okay, well, what should they do now? Who should they murder overnight? And then the other thing, of course, is they're scheming to actually try to get people voted out in the banishment and also trying to protect themselves. But, you know, how do we dwindle down the numbers? One way to do it is to put suspicion on someone else and get them to be voted out, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty entertaining. I've been enjoying it.
All right, I can handle some reality TV, which I'll mention in just a minute. So I think you sold me on this. I'm gonna have to do one season. I presume they're not long seasons, you know, 25 episodes or something. Or...
No, I think they're like 12, or I'm not sure if it's the same in each one. And actually, one of that number might be the reunion show. At the end. So I will tell you this right. From my experience, it was like you started out, you don't know who any of these people are, you know, maybe you're slowly kind of, you know, you're enjoying it, it's okay or whatever. And then you get like halfway through the season and you're just like, well, I'm gonna have to binge watch these next 6 episodes. So anyway,
all right. The traders,
down the hole,
traders
down the rabbit hole.
On Peacock, you said?
Yeah, it might only be on Peacock.
Okay.
I believe that it was a Peacock original. The US version was a Peacock original. And it looked like, this is interesting too. It looks like they released all of season 1 at once. Like they were saying, binge this. But then on season 2, they went week to week.
Week to week. Okay. Interesting. All right. That's going to go on my list. Well, another Peacock reality show. This is also elsewhere, but I watch it on Peacock. With the 21st season of Top Chef just ended. This one was, I only bring this up because it was unique in that new host this season, Padma Lakshya is gone,
Right.
Kristen Fish is in. So they use that as a moment to change some of the rules, change some of the formats. They went to Milwaukee to do this season. So a lot of controversy about, did it work? Did it not work? How was the new host? A lot of people thought, especially after the past couple seasons, that the quality of this level of contestants this year weren't quite as high as in years past. Season just ended. Thought it ended very well. Was a good. I enjoyed some of the changes. I enjoyed the new host. So if you had doubts and you're a Top Chef fan over the past 2 decades, it is worth checking out.
Cool. Yeah, I used to watch Top Chef, and I wonder how much Top Chef has occurred since the last time I watched Top Chef. Probably quite a lot, because it's probably been 15 years.
Yeah, so they just finished season 21, and I don't know if that includes all of the All-Star seasons or not, but there are 21 full seasons of just Top Chef.
So I really want to binge some reality TV, because I know I used to enjoy Top Chef.
Yeah.
So I could really just spend my whole summer watching reality TV.
That's right. If we didn't have all this other stuff to talk about.
Oh, there's other stuff. There's the Bears coming out. All right, let's finally get there. We're gonna talk about the Bear. So hopefully everyone is aware the Bear season 3 comes to Hulu on June 27th, which is this coming Thursday, is an FX show. It's FX on Hulu. Trying to continue my tendency to be pedantic about what network produces what. Anyhow, we're looking forward to that. So we're going to look back at the Bear season 2, potentially also season 1, right? Think about where season 2 left things. Questions going into season 3. You get the idea. All right. So spoilers on the table for everything in season 1 and season 2 of the Bear. And we'll be back in about 10 seconds.
All right, we're back to talk about The Bear, primarily looking at season 2, but also touching on some of season 1. The Bear is created, co-written by Christopher Storer. Season 2, just a short recap before we jump into where we left things. Season 2, The Bear focuses on chefs Carmen Brazato, Sydney Adamu, trying to open their new restaurant, The Bear, that takes the place of Carmi's family restaurant, which was known in season 1 as The Beef. It's a restaurant that his brother left to him. The kitchen crew, including cousin Richie, Marcus, Tina, Ibrahim, all returned for this second season. They're part of the plan to make this new fine dining establishment work. Carmi's sister, who is quite pregnant, agrees to be their project manager. Neil Fack returns to do everything they need him to do. He's their Mr. Fix-It as they get this thing up off the ground. Uncle Cicero is funding part of the project, but has given them a very tight timeline, expects quick and positive results. And a lot of standout episodes from season 2. We get a family reunion that goes horribly wrong. Carmi finds opportunities for Marcus, for Cousin, for Tina, all grow in their abilities and in their confidence while they race to try to meet the deadline to open for a friends and family night at the Bear. Meanwhile, Carmi begins a relationship with an old high school friend named Claire, but all along doubts his ability to be a successful fine dining chef while also being able to have a life outside the restaurant. Season 2 ends with a successful service at Friends and Family Night, but with Carmi locked in a refrigerator. Angry at himself, he tried to make both things in his life work. Should we talk about where we are with these characters? Should we talk about, obviously that gets us into sort of the Carmi Claire aspect. What should we start with here?
Yeah, I think in general, running through the characters would be a good idea. But also, right, you wrote on season 2, and looking at your recap for the finale of season 2, you ended with a bunch of questions.
Hey,
right? Questions heading into season 3. It's been about a year. We don't necessarily have to use this to structure everything, but your first question was, what happens the day after between Carmi and Claire? What does this day look like? How does the voicemail he heard impact him? And would Claire ever take him back? thoughts there? I mean, we know we've seen the trailer for season 3. We do know that Claire is in it.
Yeah, we do. I think they purposefully leave out a lot of, or any of, their interaction, Carmy and Claire, sort of how they are trying to resolve or not resolve things. One of the details of Carmy being locked in that fridge at the end is, I think he calls the fact that he tried to make that work, he called himself stupid for ever thinking that it could work, that he could rise to this level of creating this elite restaurant, but also have this successful relationship outside. Of course, Claire is right outside the door and hears all of this.
Well, and she hears him say that their relationship was a waste of his time.
That's what it is. Yeah, a waste of time. Yeah.
Ouch.
I mean, just not, and in the real world, how can you come back from that? I don't know. But what will Storer and company do to try to resolve this? I don't know. For me, much of season 2 was about Carmy trying to walk that line between these two lives. I don't know how much they'll focus on that. It will certainly be there. I don't know how much of it will be about, can I again think about how to make both of these sides of my life work?
Well, I guess this first question actually opens up a lot of the things I just want to talk about, including what you were just saying, right? So, but first on the Carmy and Claire question, look, cards on the table. I hope that they reconcile.
Me too.
Not everyone out there feels that way, I was motivated to write like this whole article in defense of Claire after season 2, and someone just rather recently commented on it and were like, "Oh, but read this other article someone else wrote about how you're wrong." So there's that, but I mean, even so, I have no expectation that they're going to reconcile quickly or easily or anything like that, and maybe they won't at all. But if they do reconcile in season 3, I would guess season 3 finale or something, not the premiere, not the first episode.
Okay, yes, we are in complete agreement about that. I will be very disappointed this show has them back together in a happy place at the end of episode 1. That just does not seem like that's going to happen.
I don't think so at all. And in fact, I'll say this further: if they did that, then I might start thinking that these people out there who are calling Claire's character manic pixie dream girl trope character, and maybe you're right if they make it that easy, but I don't think that they will. But that it does feed into one of my questions about season 3. The big theme, it seemed to me, in season 2 in particular, was something along the lines of what you were saying about work-life balance, or however we put that.
Yep.
But part of what I enjoyed is it felt nuanced and not like it was taking a straightforward line in terms of, it was Carmy who kept thinking that he had to choose between his work and Claire, as it were. But he was kind of doing that to himself. And there are a lot of indications that he didn't necessarily have to make that choice if he wasn't so caught up in his own damage about having to make that choice.
Yeah.
But it's really kind of unclear, because even with the other characters, this actually gets to your second question at the end of your recap article. With what they do with Marcus at the very end, where there's a whole thing with Marcus and his mother, and in the closing montage, I recall, you see his phone ringing, and there's this kind of implication that something very bad has happened to Marcus's mother. So we can talk about that specifically, but also I'm wondering, what are they doing with this theme, and is that a theme that's really going to carry through for the rest of the series in terms of this kind of question of whether being super successful with the restaurant means,
that you can't,
cutting out personal life or what?
So a couple thoughts on that. I do wonder how they will address sort of this work life thing, because as I understand it, and have sort of read about this and trying to be better about how I approach this show, I read The Unreasonable Hospitality, the book that comes from the idea of this Forks episode. Most of these elite Michelin star chefs say you cannot be at that level of fine dining and then have, I'm going to spend my 60 hours a week doing that and then go have a very happy, successful, fruitful personal life outside of that. It's like they're doing this all day, every day. And so does the show deviate from that and say, oh, no, actually, the reality is we believe that can happen. I don't know if they'll go that way because I don't know if they're going to dress it as, okay, we're going to add happiness to both layers, to both owning a restaurant and having a successful, mentally healthy, emotionally healthy personal life. It's almost like they're causing Carmy and others in the show to choose. And I'll just sort of see if that's sort of the direction that they take. You can have one or the other. That doesn't touch on the Marcus thing, if we do need to talk about, but I just sort of interested to see if that's where they go with it.
Yeah, and I mean, this is where I'm at. Like, so I kind of hope not, because I thought part of what made season 2 so great was the kind of nuance. Maybe I have to say more to try to clarify what I have in mind here. I think what you're saying, look, it's a real problem, right? I'm not at all trying to deny that is a real thing, that you can talk to these, Michelin level chefs in the real world, that will say things like this and so on and so forth. That I don't know that necessarily means it's true, but it's also a question of how do you think about it? And that would be, in a way, I guess, that cuts beyond whether you're a chef or some other kind of professional who's very committed to their work and perhaps working very long hours. What about, does that mean, hey, you're not spending time with your family, you don't have time for love, or, is it a choice or something like that? I thought that part of what I felt like season 2 was doing, there was at least this thematic line suggesting that it's not necessarily a choice, or that it's wrong to make that kind of dichotomy, or something like that, in that theme about every second counts and everything. Well, that's whether you're at work or not. Like you could take that lesson that way, that it's, well, whether it's that you're working the shift at the restaurant or you're engaging in interpersonal relationships, with people that you care about and so on. Every second counts, right? So like even if you're not spending a ton of time with that loved one, what time do you have? And are you giving the appropriate attention to them in that time that you do have, however limited, right? I think they were kind of opening up that theme, but then some of this stuff makes me worry that they are going back to more of a binary choice, because that'd be a simpler story.
So I think it sort of circle back to Marcus for a second on that exact point. I think that you're right, and they will address this, particularly around this theme of every second counts. I think what they're setting up, I personally believe, having not seen anything, that Marcus will have a bigger presence in this season. And I wonder if they're going to make his choice, well, maybe more binary than the others, but I didn't spend the seconds that counted with my mother. I was here trying to make this work. Look what it cost me. I couldn't be there when whatever it is that happened to her, if she passed away or something tragic happened. And how will that affect him personally? How will that affect him professionally? I think that they'll really explore that this season, and look towards him as sort of that. Maybe we'll move slightly off of Carmy and City in that regard, and we'll push him more towards other folks like Marcus and Cousin. That's just my perception. I don't know if that's the case, but I would be interested to see that, I guess, if they go that way.
Yeah, same. I mean, all the characters are great, so I'd love to see more of Marcus. That was really a almost throw in that montage. Oh no, something bad's happened to Marcus's mother. So I'm curious to see what they do with that. And I guess what we're talking about right now, Ryan, is my big question for season 3.
Yeah.
When they've been playing with this theme, work-life balance theme, however we might want to give that a shorthand. what do they do with that? Because I think what they were doing with that in season 2 is for the most part something that I found really compelling and really, really interesting because it was grappling with the complexity of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like there's a risk where the show could oversimplify it.
Yeah.
And I hope they don't, I guess is what I'm saying.
I don't get the impression that that will happen. I don't see this as a show that's going to take steps back. I think that we've been adding layers of complexity and layers of depth to characters and layers of motivation for each of these and sort of why they want to do what they do. So I don't anticipate that will happen. I think that the focus on so many individual characters in specific episodes last year will lead us more towards, now that we know sort of what they're doing, why they're doing it, and what their motivations are, let's pursue their role in this more. And I think we'll see, we'll certainly see some of that.
Yeah. And personally, I would love to have more kind of one character episodes like that. So we'll see what we get.
That's where season 2 was so great. I mean, it's entertaining when you have the service. It's entertaining when you're trying to, get the gas lines to work and some of the comedic elements that go along with that. But when you were really focused on Marcus and Tina and Cousin and all these folks, that's what season 2 was at its best.
Right. And that's that, to try to put a bow on this to some extent, that's kind of what I'm saying is, you could say The Bear's a show about a restaurant, but we all know it's really a show about every second counts, or how do you grapple with past trauma moving into the future and interpersonal relationships and all of that, right?
This is something, in my finale recap, and I think in all the pieces that I wrote on this season, everything in my mind for season 2 kept pointing back to a conversation that Cousin and Carmi had in the first 10 minutes of that first episode, where they talk about purpose.
About purpose, yeah.
Cousin's reading this book, trying to figure out, what am I here to do? Why am I here to do it? And this idea of purpose, sort of fits right into these themes of what you're talking about here.
Right, yeah. Looking back again at your questions on the restaurant front, you say Carmi wanted nothing to do with food critic reviews in season 1. Will he need them for the restaurant to survive in season 3? Signs point to yes.
Signs point to absolutely yes. So much so that I think that we've seen in the trailer, they have pictures of food critics on the wall. I mean, my understanding is these high-level restaurants definitely do this. They have the pictures of the food critics on the wall, so they know when these people come in. It's emergency mode activated. We've got to make sure we're doing everything right, and they are doing their best to try to service those so they can get good reviews. They can get the ratings or the stars or whatever it is. This is not a doubt that this is part of what season 3 is going to be.
Yeah, I think so. And also, to jump to the last bullet point you have here in your season 2 finale recap, you say it's sure to be the MacGuffin in season 3. Can the Bear become profitable enough in less than 15 months so Carmi can pay back Uncle Jimmy the $800,000 debt?
Yeah,
that's going to structure.
This is Chekhov's financial deadline. You can't just throw that out there and not make it, part of what they're trying to do. They have to turn this place into a profitable restaurant in a certain number of months, or Jimmy's, I'm pulling out. You're going to owe me the loan, whatever it is.
Yeah. And Jimmy, he's an interesting character because on the one hand, he almost seems like a cutthroat mobster.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, he really is like a family member type who cares about them.
Yes.
So it's an interesting dynamic. And
I do wonder, so this is a callback to, there's a scene in the finale that's a callback to Forks, and it's a callback to Fishes, where Uncle Jimmy talks about his dad getting him the chocolate banana. Richie goes and learns about unreasonable hospitality, and he gives them that chocolate banana in the finale. So I do wonder if there are some incentives or motivations changed by Uncle Jimmy in the new season, whereas, I see what this could be or where this is headed. So even if they don't meet an arbitrary deadline, we're still going to keep going here. I don't know. I'd like to see what his thoughts are after experiencing that kind of service or that type of environment that they had in the finale.
My read on it, and part of why I think he's sort of an interesting character, my read on it is he really does want them to succeed, but it's still got to be successful. And if it's not successful, the business side of him is going to win out, and that he's very much the kind of guy who will say at that moment, it's not personal. I love you. It's
Yeah.
business. Your business failed. Game
I, I
over.
I
You
agree
know?
with you. I think it's very circular in this regard, in that they have to be successful, they have to turn a profit, they have to be able to meet some of these things they're trying to do. That means that they have to impress these critics, which means they have to get the good ratings, which means they have to get more people, which then in turn it sort of creates this circle of things they're trying to achieve so that they can keep him on board with all this.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna halfway kind of skip your last two questions, but also talk about them in a different way. One is about Natalie. She's gonna be a mother. What kind of mother will she be? The other one's about Richie and Carmi and their fight, right? So we should recall they have a falling out also at the end of the season 2 finale. Connecting these two questions in a certain way is that Richie calls Carmi Donna, and Donna, of course, is Richie's mother, played by Jamie Lee Curtis in the Fishes
Yes.
episode. So I think that cuts, but I would guess that Richie and Carmi will more or less, in contrast to the Claire, what I said about
Yeah.
Claire, Richie and Carmi, I think they'll mend fences relatively quickly.
Yeah, I think that they have to make this thing work. You know, it almost seems like they're creating this I don't know, this triarchy, to use a Game of Thrones word, where Carmi, Sydney, and Cousin have to be in sync for this thing to
and
work well.
I mean, the thing about Richie and Carmi, you think about their relationship, there has always been tension between them and will always be tension between them, I think, but they're cousins.
Yeah.
Are they really cousins, or just call each other
No,
cousin?
they're just she's just colloquially, nominally cousin.
Yeah, but that's almost more powerful, right? Like the decision that we are cousins, what does that imply? The fact that they call each other cousin, we are family, meaning that, look, even if we totally throw forks at each other,
Yeah.
we're still family. We're still coming back, next year. We're coming back for Christmas next year, right?
That's right.
Like, you don't get out of that. So, do you think we'll see Jamie Lee Curtis again in this season?
I'm going to say yes. I think we know we see John Bernthal. We've seen him in the trailer.
Uh-huh.
I think we see some of this crew of people, the sort of the cameo fest of episode 6 last year. I think we see several of them this year, or this season.
Yeah.
I wonder sometimes if Bernthal would have been back in season 2 if season 1 had not been this massive, massive hit, right? But when you're attached to something like this, it's like, yeah, I want to be a part of this family, a part of this conversation. I want to be, to use my kids' phrase, get the flowers for these kinds of things, because it's so, it's just so predominant, so culturally relevant. So I think we'll see some of them in the season this time.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly seems from the things that I read that the people in Fishes, they all wanted to do this show,
Yeah.
So I don't know that that's the question. Narratively, we saw Donna again in the season 2 finale. She is like trying to show up for the family night, but then she can't do it, and you have that scene.
Yeah.
We're all talking about this with you before last year, between her and Pete, that it's Pete is the one who knows that she was there. Sugar's, kind of doofus husband guy, but then he's covered for her, right?
Yeah.
I
was glad in the finale that they did not have some sort of reconciliation or resolution between that family. That leaves it open to potentially, those conversations happening here in this season, that sort of things that we want to face that we have trouble facing between that family is still on the table. And that's a direction they can drive, in this season, to have Jamie Lee Curtis and some of those things come back into play, because they weren't resolved at all in season 2.
Yeah, you wonder, because alternately, Natalie and Carmi might be sitting there going, She didn't come to family night. We're just
Yeah.
we don't want anything to do with her, basically, It'll be sad if the bit with Pete is the last thing that we see. But I think they'll do something. I do think they'll do something
You
because Pete's
know,
had to swallow that. And
Pete is going to slip. Pete is going to say something. He is. I mean, he just
yeah,
he can't hold stuff in. We've seen that already.
can't. You're right. He can't. There'll be some scene where like Nat's complaining about how Donna didn't come and he just can't keep it in anymore and he lets it slip. But still it's a narrative question that I wanted to ask and talk about because I do think that the actors involved, and this would include, did I already list names? Bob Odenkirk and
Yeah.
John Mulaney. The indications are that they wanted to do the show, but the other thing that people should recall is, and maybe it'd be easy to forget this because they drop it all at once.
Yeah.
They kept that under wraps before season 2. Before season 2 was released, people did not know that any of these people were going to be in it. Jamie Lee Curtis, Bob Odenkirk, and so on and so forth. Right? That's my recollection, anyway.
That's exactly. There was a complete surprise. I mean, we were able to see this shortly before the season dropped last year, but yes, complete surprise. There was no announcement. There was nothing. There was the Bob Odenkirk news. Yes, I mean we sort of saw that, but it was in the context of, oh, he might appear and have this role, but it turns out he was in an episode with 15 other cameos that were not announced, were not put out in front. I do want to ask of one other particular one. Do you think we see Chef Terry, Olivia Colman, this season?
No,
I don't think so either.
but we could.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It seems like Olivia Colman's real busy. So,
Yeah.
but I don't know how much weight I should put on that because, again, if it's like show up for a day to film a scene, maybe she'd really want to do that and want to do it enough. But it's also, I'm not sure how that would fit into the narrative.
Yeah.
Why would we see her?
You're going to send another person to stage, that doesn't make much sense.
Right. I mean, it's similar with like, oh man, I'm blanking on this now. Who's the guy who plays the pastry chef that Marcus goes to?
Oh, Will Poulter.
Will Poulter. Yeah, I mean, like, it'd be the same. Will we
Yeah.
see him? Is his character going to be in it again?
Yeah.
I doubt it. Like, why would he be? Basically, if there was some reason, maybe, but
Yeah.
I don't think that they will just shoehorn in cameos of these characters for fan service or something. I don't think that they would do that. So, does it serve a kind of narrative purpose? I think probably not when it comes to both those characters.
Yeah, very interested to see. I'm interested to see what they do with Tina this year.
Yeah.
Tina, of course, went to culinary school. She seemed to have some incredibly heightened skills by the end of the season. I mean, she's obviously not at the level of Carmi and Sydney, but she was certainly holding her own when they got down to it, when they were doing the service. I think that she's one of those, you start out as could barely cook mashed potatoes to now she's at this level. Suspend a little bit of disbelief, but it's sort of these arcs you love to see. You have to have some of those things.
Well, then she's bought in, basically.
Yeah.
Where did we leave things with Ibrahim?
He came back, right? So he sort of got frustrated at culinary school, left.
A service window or something?
Yeah, so he's going to be like the to-go guy, or the guy that make sure and runs the window that gives people things when they're coming to pick them up, right? And so they need someone to manage that. I don't know that we see him cook necessarily. They seem to hire a few chefs. We saw, what's his name, the one that got fired because he was doing cocaine on the
yeah.
So we saw a few of those come in. So I think we see Ibrahim more as like he's more of a customer service role this time. That's my impression, again, having not seen
Yeah, I think so. I'd kind of like to see him get an episode, though. Give him a focus episode or whatever term he used for that. That would be interesting. He didn't get one.
Right.
So yeah, looking forward to season 3 of The Bear, man. What else do we have to hit on? I think we want to talk about the episode titles at all? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's for those that might consider that spoiler. There are a couple of episode titles you can look at and say, oh, this person is getting a specific episode based on some of the things we see here.
Yeah.
Just from one word, every episode is a one-word title, or two-word title. There are some ones where you can tell this is going to be focused on this person.
The more dangerous thing might be looking at the very brief episode descriptions that they have up in terms of spoilers, but I do wonder sometimes about these things in terms of who writes them and how accurate are they. Probably with this one more than what I'm thinking about, but I was noticing we were talking about the traders earlier in the podcast, and I was looking at one of the episode descriptions for the traders, and I was like, whoever wrote this episode description has not seen this show. Because it's like that's not how it works. I forget exactly what it was, but it was like the way that they described in the episode description was like did not fit how the show works.
I tend to try to avoid those, not just for spoilers, but because of that exact thing you're talking about. I mean, some of these shows, and I'll just use the Bears as a reference for that, they'll end up with things like Carmy has to solve a problem at the restaurant, that type of, just don't tell anything. I'd rather see that than give me details that are wrong and send me in a different direction.
But it's like I did see one, and I think what it said was like Carmy thinks about apologizing.
Okay.
Every episode of the Bear. Every episode of the Bear. Cool. So
yeah, I think the only thing we're saying there is that we know that this season is dropping all at one time, season 3 on June 27th. They filmed this season and season 4 back to back. The thought amongst those of us that are, mildly informed is that will be it. There will be 4 seasons and that will be the end of the show, but that's certainly not something that's set in stone, but they wanted to sort of capitalize on this momentum of this. They've done it all back to back. So next summer we will get a season 4, and then it's kind of wait and see what happens after that.
Yeah, it does seem likely. They managed to put out a season each June, I believe. Right?
Yep.
In our era of everything having disrupted production schedules and all of that for various reasons, they've managed to stay on that kind of yearly schedule. So I think that's definitely part of why they wanted to go ahead and do season 4, film it back to back or at the same time, or I don't know exactly how they did it, but we have been told that I would expect then we're going to get season 4 next June. That's their plan here. Mm-hmm. And then is that going to be it? Maybe so. I mean, even just in terms of thinking about the story, I could well see them wrapping up the story after a 4th season. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think we'll know more over the next 12 months, certainly before season 4 comes out, what's going to happen. And season 3 will dictate how much more of a story is left to tell, I think,
Right, exactly. So maybe I'm wrong, but like, what is the story that we're telling? And then how much more do you need? From what we know right now, it kind of feels like, okay, 2 more seasons, I can imagine in my own mind relatively well. To try to go more than that, maybe something else would have to open up to make it feel like there's more story to tell beyond 4 seasons. So
in the end, the more I thought about it, the more I remember writing at the end of season 1, how entertaining can it be to watch a group of people try to open a restaurant, right?
Yeah.
And the combination of how they were able to do that, plus how they focus on the character-specific episodes. I'm going to remember, they have not opened a restaurant yet. They are not officially open the last time that we saw them. And so we've got the whole, every challenge that will go with the doors opening the restaurant for the first time still to go. So who knows how far we get with this story.
Yeah, I guess all I'm saying is if we get to the point where the restaurant's open and then it's not it. I wouldn't see it ever becoming just a show about them running a restaurant week to week. You can only do that for so long and have it still feel like the Bear, because they were saying earlier, the Bear's not really about running a restaurant. The Bear's about
you can't have a season.
How do you live?
Every season they're trying to gain their next Michelin star. I mean, that's just not the show.
Right. Yeah, it's just like have it turn into Top Chef all of a sudden, right? That's not what the show's about. So anyway. We're looking forward to season 3. Again, comes out on Thursday the 27th. We will be back on June 28th. Look for our podcast to come out in the evening. around whatever the same time this one did. Basically, we're on a pretty normal schedule for the moment.
Yep.
And our current plan is to talk about the whole season next Friday. Hopefully we're able to pull that off. We're thinking, look, they drop it all at once. People are going to binge the show. We're going to want to binge the show, even though in principle we don't want to binge the show. We want them to release it weekly, but they don't, and because they don't, and it's so good, we're going to watch the whole thing. So we're going to presume that we've got the whole thing watched by next Friday.
Yeah, I say everyone's going to binge it over the weekend. This podcast with the entire season recap will be waiting for you on Sunday or whenever you finish.
That's the plan. And then, yeah, beyond that, we do want to spend more time with the bear, so we'll have our eyes out for more specific things to focus in on. If you were listening along with us last year, you'll recall we did one on like the first half of the season and one on the second half of the season, and then kind of didn't like that in certain ways. So it's using season 2 as an example. The idea is that we will do the whole season and then maybe have a podcast where we talk about the Forks episode, something like that. We're just wagering that there will be analogous standout episodes in season 3 or something like that for us to spend a couple more weeks on the bear.
I cannot wait. I literally cannot wait. It's become a very anticipated time of year now, these past 3 summers waiting for this show.
Yeah. All right. So we'll wrap it up here. As always, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do consider leaving us a good rating, review. If you're on YouTube, give a thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Appreciate it if you do that. Check out TVObscast.com. You can find Ryan's articles on the bear, along with the one article I wrote on the bear, my defense of Claire. And keep an eye out there for articles coming up on season 3. Also, follow TV Obsessive on social media. We're on X, we're on Facebook, we're on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, Mastodon, I guess. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
All right, looking forward to it very much. See you then.